On today's episode of The Unwritten Rule, we're going to be recapping Mizzou's awesome game against Tennessee, 36-7. The Tigers won. We'll have all of our reactions, break down everything. Cody Schrader'S awesome performance. We got it all for you. Kenny and Peyton are here to talk about that. So we'll dive into it. But first and foremost, a word from the good old sponsor, Bet Online. The last of the major pro sports leagues is off and rolling, and college basketball is ready to go as well. BetOnline remains your top spot for all your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, they're all in full swing. I know, we're going to use our BetOnline. We use our BetOnline for all of our best beats of the week odds. So BetOnline is your number one source for wagering odds, news, and predictions. Spoiler alert for best beats. My sicko bet hit again. So thanks to BetOnline for those lines. All the hoops betting action along with every sport is available right at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. So head to BetOnline today and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts and the unwritten rule starts right now.
Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Peyton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to The Unwritten Rule. Today is Saturday, November 11th, and Mizzou football bouncing back from a great performance against Georgia. Got so many compliments, I would say, for that game. Came in and exacted revenge. We talked about it with Jay Graham in the preview of this Tennessee game, which is what Tennessee did to this team in 2022. They showed on CBS all of the pettiness with Heupel punching that last touchdown in to get to 60. The very brazen handshake between Josh Heupel and Eli Drinkwitz. And it was another pretty brazen handshake after today's result. But the result is what matters here, Kenny and Peyton, because Mizzou steamrolling Tennessee 36-7, the final in Columbia. I have a bunch of stats, and we have a ton of stuff to get through in this game. Cody Schrader, how about it? Did you guys know he was a Division II transfer that, was brought in by a boost? That whole story was off the rails again on CBS. This was an awesome game. A marquee performance for Mizzou's season. The road to 10 wins now feels so much more real. Before we dive into the specifics, boys, Mizzou 36, Tennessee 7. No points in the first quarter. What were your just reactions to the game?
After the debacle that was Mizzou basketball against Memphis last night, kind of felt like the school needed a win in this one to kind of pick up the morale. And boy, did they get that and then some. To have this game be on CBS, Mizzou really did, I guess, pick up some respect against Georgia last week. Because CBS came to Faroe, sold out game, blackout, and Mizzou absolutely. I don't know if they really can keep using something to prove anymore, because I think they've proven it at this point. It's truly this is a very, very good football team. I don't know if they'll quite get to the top 10 in the very next CFP poll, but this is a top 10 team in the nation, no doubt. Every single phase was won by Mizzou. It really felt like, even though the score wasn't lopsided in the first half, it felt like Mizzou was the better team just about every step of the way. They weren't forcing a ton of Joe Milton incompletions early, but it felt like it was building and building and building. And Mizzou they pitched a shutout in the second half, just absolutely brutally efficient on offense. You cannot ask for anything more than what Mizzou gave you today.
Eli said it so well after the game with the sideline reporter. Our defense beat their ass, and that's the most emotion I've seen Drinkwitz against another team this season. He's held back a little bit. He's kept it within the team, and we saw him even apologize at the start of the week for his actions of getting frustrated with the referees, frustrated with the calls that were happening again in the Georgia game. He kind of let it out. Blake Baker posted a meme of Michael Jordan. I took that personally, kind of meme after what they did last year. What a response. And I think it sticks with them. They talked about it. They were at rock bottom last year. They turned it around. They didn't need to prove anyone. It was proving themselves right that they could get here. And that's what it always came down to. For Cody Schrader, the one thing I'll say this before we get into our points is that, yeah, you can keep talking about, where he came from, a Division II school at Truman State. He was one of the best running backs at the Division II level. Talk about how, he should be in the SEC. Like, this is a guy who's proven it, that he is one of the best running backs
in the SEC
in the country,
Yeah.
and doing it as a receiver and a running back. And it's getting to the point that, yeah, I've talked to the Truman State head coach last year when I was on this beat. We talked about it then. He's like, we see guys lead Division II all the time, and we can't really tell them the grass isn't greener on the other side. You're not going to get an opportunity elsewhere. He was an exception. I mean, Cody Schrader just proved it to a lot of people. Kind of got lucky with how the story came down, but he's proven himself that he's an SEC running back.
Yeah, from rock bottom Kenny to a win over Rocky Top, huh? I mean, you're totally right. The something to prove mentality. Yeah, Cody Schrader was awesome. That's the first point we want to hit on. But yeah, like I just my quick reaction to the game. Like I put very much out of my brain that 2022 game just because I wanted to. It was a forgettable result. I remember in the moment how angry Mizzou fans were at what Heupel did. And yeah, from the jump, you could tell, they did not forget about this. Drinkwitz did not forget about this. I know Kirby Moore wasn't there, but they clearly informed, him of what this was. And now I know we've talked, pretty extensively about Kentucky maybe being a little kind of rivalry emerging from Mizzou. This Tennessee team, both these teams are kind of on a similar plateau now. And there's going to be, I think, some big games between these two football schools going forward.
It's very unfortunate that we don't know when that next game is. We talked about that with Jay. These games are, kind of meaning a little bit more because these two teams are fighting in the East to, take up Georgia's spot. But we don't know when these two teams could play each other again.
Yeah, but whenever it's going to happen, it's going to be fiery, assuming, Heupel and Drinkwitz are going to be at the helms of their respective football teams, which they've both been great. So I don't know why they wouldn't be. But yeah, awesome game. We got to talk about him. The man of the hour, Mr. Cody Schrader, 205 yards and a touchdown on 35 carries on the ground, 116 yards through the air. I'll do my stats last. The two I wanted to hit on just in the game in general for Heupel, it was his first scoreless quarter, I believe, when they held him scoreless in the first quarter. First scoreless first quarter that he's had in his tenure. And then Tennessee also had the ball for less than 10 minutes in the first half. Mizzou absolutely dominated that part of the game. We'll get to that. But let's segue to Cody Schrader. I mentioned those stats. What a performance for the guy. Kenny, I think, hit the nail on the head. Stop talking about him as just making it to this level. Let's talk about him as being one of the best at this level in the SEC as he's been all season. What were your boys' thoughts on Schrader's performance?
Yeah, not only would I say we should stop just talking about him making it to this level. I mean, he's really, even from last year, I mean, we've grown. I remember, and I'll take full responsibility for this, I was very skeptical of Cody Schrader at first. I remember Kenny telling me when he was on the beat, like, dude, Cody Schrader is going to be taking a lot of carries. I did not believe Kenny when he told me that, but that wound up being true. And over time, I mean, it became very clear this is a legit dude that belongs here. I'm not a draft scout. I can't talk about whether he would translate to the next level or not. But I mean, entered today leading the SEC in rushing yards. He's going to be leading that category tomorrow. And I would have to say probably will be leading it by the end of the year. And that is just an unbelievable. Mizzou's never going to find a gem quite like that in the portal ever again. You're not going to do it. This is like totally unforeseen stuff, but the transfer portal does give you the chance to get these guys, and Cody Schrader has just absolutely earned every opportunity. I mean, I don't know if this is one of the stats you were going to say, Knowlton, but he had 100+ rushing yards and 100+ receiving yards in the SEC since 2007. There are only 6 guys that have done that. The names on that list are Percy Harvin, Dexter McCluster, Darrell Williams, Alvin Kamara, and Chris Rainey. Like, that is an unbelievable list to be a part of. And he's the first player in SEC history with 200 plus rushing yards and 100 plus receiving yards. Tennessee was not ready for that at all. I mean, they held him to 25 yards on the ground last season in that absolutely terrible game. I think they completely overlooked Cody Schrader, and he made them absolutely pay.
Yeah, I mean, you had every right to be skeptical. Everyone was a little bit skeptical. There's a guy who's really doesn't fit the mold of what an SEC running back kind of looked like. Came up from Truman State, Division II level, and a lot of people were skeptical. And maybe even like the future of it was that maybe he was going to be a special teams guy. Because when I talked to the coach at Truman State, he was like, we kind of liked what he could do on special teams too. It wasn't just him as a running back. He can tackle people if they need him out there. And he was a two-way guy in high school, like a lot of players were. But it's really just translated, and just I think the work ethic has really gotten Cody Schrader this far. And the number one thing that's really stood out to me about this game is that not only did he get the most carries of anyone in the game, of course, he is the number one running back. He had the most receptions too. He had 5 receptions this game for 116 yards. We know that first play on offense, he was just wide open. I was watching it. He was in motion on that play, kind of just zigzags around on the field, is wide open on the right side on the sideline. And I mean, that was just really what Cody Schrader was, just always open. And he's a safety blanket too. We talked about that last time. If the pressure coming and he's there in the flat, Cook's going to hit him. And it was just like that kind of stuff that Schrader's always open, or he always finds a hole too. And I've knocked on a little bit, the speed. He got caught a couple times last year on some big runs, especially when you think about that one against Georgia, got caught right at the goal line. This year, it's just like he finds these bursts of speed that just come out of nowhere. Like I said before, like guys like I used to think about Le'Veon Bell, who would like let the play develop and then find his hole. That's what Cody Schrader does. He lets the play develop, finds the hole, and then that's when the speed kicks in. It's not like he's going to full tilt right away. He's finding the hole, then he turns it on, and it's unbelievable like what he's done for this offense.
Yeah, he showed off his patience. They did a good job on the CBS broadcast of noting that, where, he lets the offensive line do their jobs, and then he makes the right read, and then off he goes. And then, yeah, you mentioned, he's a lot faster than a lot of people I think he is, especially this season. I think he's gotten a little quicker. He can break a tackle on occasion. He's a smart runner. And that in the end is sometimes better than having just a speedster, is a guy who knows where to go, who knows when he's in trouble, how to get out of it. He had a run or two where, again, and we say this about Luther Burden all the time, but Schrader had a couple runs where it's like he should have been tackled for a couple yard loss, and then he turns it into something at least a little bit positive. But it was a whole bunch of positives today for Cody Schrader. Peyton, you mentioned that 300 plus scrimmage yard stat you had. He is the second player in Mizzou history with 300 plus scrimmage yards. Devin West, who played in 1998, is the first. The other stats I had, here's the other list of players in college football history with 300 plus scrimmage yards. Steve Slayton, who played for West Virginia. Devin Neal, who I think played recently for Kansas. And then the other two, last year. And then the other two names on this list are Joe Mixon and Christian McCaffrey, and then Cody Schrader today. So unbelievable company that he kept. Great stats for him. Drinkwitz after the game. This comes from Callum McAndrew. I thought the individual play of Cody Schrader was unbelievable. What an incredible day that little Superman had for us. So Mizzou's a little. Drinkwitz has some nuggets in here, by the way, that we need to touch on as we keep going. But little Superman Cody Schrader was absolutely absurd today. If you guys have any more just quick hits on him.
Yeah, no, I mean, can't say enough about Cody Schrader. Really, just this season has just been such a great, just good running back. I mean, absolutely rock solid. I still do want to see a little more from the other running backs just to keep Cody Schrader more fresh, just keep him from getting so beat down. But he's absolutely earned the right to be the bell cow. Another thing to shout out, I mean, it's not just Schrader making plays. The O-line is just so much improved. I mean, in every single run play, it feels like there is just a hole. I mean, it took a little bit of time and a little bit of flack for this O-line to kind of truly gel together, but there's not a weakness on that O-line anymore, I think. Yes, Connor Tollison, again, had a bad snap today. That was way earlier than Cook was expecting. But God, when those guys are just blocking, and that's it. I mean, there's not a weakness. Cameron Johnson, who was like a huge target of ire earlier in the year, has really stepped up. Armand Membu is getting national hype for being just a huge behemoth that just moves people off the line. Brett Norfleet has really improved as a blocker throughout the year. The entire left side of the line, every single one of them deserves a shout out. And yeah, it's just been far and away, I think, the most improved unit on the team.
One thing I want to note, last thing about Cody Schrader, is that the first play in the second drive for Mizzou's offense, everyone was going to the left side. He went to the right side. I mean, he went the wrong way. Ended up being a 4-yard loss. It was like it was nothing. Didn't bother him. I mean, it made a simple mistake. Just went the wrong way when the offense was going to the left, and ended up turning in one of the best performance of his college football career in the SEC.
I'll throw in one last quote before we move on from Drink. On tackling Cody Schrader, quote, "It's like a big game of chicken, and he ain't no chicken." So there you go, Drink. He's pulling out all the stops here at the presser. Thank you, Callum, for that. Let's segue to the other side of the ball for a little bit now, because I remember us talking with Jay about this, and he was very complimentary of Cody Schrader, just as we and he was complimentary as well of Tennessee's running game. That's been a little bit more involved this season under Heupel when they don't have Hendon Hooker at QB anymore. The combination of Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson, and Jabari Small, they combined for just 47 rushing yards. Their leading rusher was actually Joe Milton, who had 36 yards on 10 carries. That's where I want to segue into the defense. We can talk about the turnovers as well, of course, them benefiting Mizzou. But let's start with that. What impressed you guys about this defensive unit, particularly with slowing down this Tennessee rushing attack? They had kind of a three-headed monster at times, and Mizzou, I felt like, really shut them down.
Tristan Newsome, far and away, was the player that caught my eye the most. Tyron Hopper went down with an injury in the first half. Tristan Newsome came in. He was all over the field. He's a younger guy. He's not super experienced or anything like that. Believe it's just his redshirt sophomore or redshirt freshman year, but he's played a few times this year, and every time he has, he's been a sure-handed tackler. And I thought he made a few big differences today. I remember there was a read option where, if I'm not mistaken, Milton kept the ball. He ran out to his right. Newsom was the only guy there. He drops Milton for a loss. If he doesn't make that tackle, that's a first down gain. But other than Newsom, the run defense in general, I mean, other than the LSU game, the run defense has just been borderline elite all year. I was confident in that unit coming in. And Joe Milton, when you don't have your run game, you kind of got to air it out a lot. And at first, Joe Milton was taking what Mizzou has given him, hit a lot of slants, hit a lot of basic plays. But I hate to be mean, Joe Milton's not a very good quarterback. I mean, it's just very inaccurate. You could tell in the second half when Mizzou had him in some obvious passing downs, they were getting closer and closer to getting that breaking turnover. I remember Joseph Charleston was a little late to pick up a slant, and he knew it would have been a pick if he had broke out in time. And then Dalen Carnell finally, with the straw that broke the camel's back. Big revenge game for that unit. Like Kenny said, Blake Baker tweeting and I took that personally after what Tennessee did to them last year. It was really just a unique game plan. We're so used to Mizzou bringing the house. Blake Baker loves to just roll the dice with blitzes and stuff like that. He trusted his 3 D linemen, whoever they were. It was typically Walker and Robinson on the outside and whoever he rotated in at D tackle, and it paid off.
I'm glad you hit on Tristan Newsom because, I mean, he's a transfer. He's a JUCO guy. He comes into this program a little bit more hype, had a good spring, looked like a guy that was going to mix in pretty early. Had a couple, games where he did show out a little bit as one of those, the third or fourth linebacker, with Chad Bailey out for the year and then Tyron Hopper having the ankle injury and not being out there for most of the second half of that game. Newsom finished with the most tackles. Him and Travis Johnson had the most tackles, and then that's a great thing to see for such a young linebacker and one who's really, it's in his first year with the SEC as well. He had 8 tackles, 3 solo. Peyton mentioned that tackle for loss and the QB hit. A great game for him. Chuck Hicks had a great game as well. He's really stepped in this role, missed all of last season with that injury and comes back this year A little bit of hype from him coming out of Wyoming. Another guy who's transferred, and just a lot of guys just stepping up on the defense. And you talk about D-Rob as well. D-Rob's playing with a lot more fire this year. The guy was invited to one Senior Bowl last year, wasn't the one he wanted. He comes back, moves back out to the edge, and is just in people's faces. Him and Milton, they were face mask to face mask. That's not something you see from D-Rob last year. I mean, he seemed a little bit more reserved. This year, he's just a different animal. Out of anyone on this defense, for sure lock to be in that Reese's Senior Bowl is him, just based on what he's been able to do this year. He's had, up and down with the injuries as well, but man, D-Rob has just been a force since he's moved back to the edge.
Yeah, and that I'm glad you mentioned the D-Rob thing about him getting in people's faces. I was skeptical of that move out to the edge, but boy, it has paid off just so much. I mean, Blake Baker kind of just had to leave him on an island today. He brought 3 a lot, just let Mizzou sit back in zone, just make Joe Milton make a mistake. And he found a way to get a sack at the end there. Like you said, he just is an absolute leader on that unit. And I don't know how many people noticed. I mean, even though he didn't have his most stellar day rushing the passer, he was absolutely dominant against the run. I noticed him a few times, whether it was, even if he didn't get the tackle, just knocking dudes back, just disrupting everything. Tennessee had nowhere to run today, and that is what they've been doing all season long, and you saw what happened as a result.
Yeah. I think you guys hit the nail on the head. That's the two things that jumps out to me when I look at the stat sheet is, Newsom and Hicks being the number one, tied for the number 1, and then the number 2 leading tacklers, and they're, backups on this team, truthfully, when Bailey and Hopper are available and ready to go. So I think that shows the mark of a good team, a good defense. It's built on how deep it is. I know we talked about that with Tennessee again, with Jay, he thought their defensive line had a lot of depth to it. And I think you can say the same for Mizzou's linebacking core. Let's talk about these turnovers too, guys, because I think that's something definitely to hit on. We had the interception, of course, at the end of the game with Dalen Carnell getting the pick 6, and then the 2 fumbles. Those were crucial in terms of keeping with how long Mizzou's offense had the ball. How key were those turnovers, and just like thoughts on this team being able to generate takeaways, because I think that's something that when we talk to other people about Mizzou, that's something that I feel like gets hit on a lot, and that was showcased on full display here today with the 2 fumbles and the pick.
Yeah, they've been up and down, sometimes creating turnovers, but I mean, and today really one of the turnovers they did not do anything to create. But that pick 6, I mean, that interception was, you could tell it was coming. I mean, in the second half, Joe Milton was really making a lot of riskier throws. He was throwing the ball really hard and got away with a couple. I remember Ennis was really mad he didn't pick off a ball that got by someone in the flat. I could feel it in my bones. Like, they're going to get a takeaway. Finally, Dalen Carnell reads a ball perfectly. I mean, it was like telegraphed. And that was it. That was really like kind of the DVD moment, if you want to say. Like, that was just a really cool thing for Dalen Carnell to get. It was just more than anything else the exclamation point for the defense, because I mean, they suffocated Tennessee.
I want to go to the other turnover that they forced when Cad forced that fumble, and what really stood out to me is just the response from Cad as well. We know he's had a great season. We know he's had draft hype going into these last couple of weeks, and he gave he's the one who the touchdown was scored on, the only touchdown for Tennessee. Dante Thornton makes a great catch. Right, the ball looked like it might have hit the ground. It didn't. He makes that catch there. And it's like it didn't even bother Cat. I mean, he kind of thought maybe he dropped it, but he comes back later and lays a nice hit and gets that fumble. Chuck Hicks recovers it. It's just the response is what's really stood out to me about this defense. They're not dwelling in anything else. I mean, this is an SEC caliber defense. They can't dwell in what they've done in the past. And I mean, we've seen it before, that games like last year where a lot of this defense came back, they remember everything from that Tennessee game. Coming into this year, they're not dwelling in it. They're using it as fuel. And that's what's something you've seen a lot from, especially these corners. Ennis, who's had an up and down year with injuries, trying to battle those, stay healthy and get on the field. We even talked to Peyton and I just, messaging or just in a group chat. Matt Miller, who's from ESPN, posted something this morning saying that, there's like first round buzz for him. And you're thinking about it like, well, he hasn't really had like a year that's really stood out, probably because quarterbacks aren't throwing his way all the time. And that's what's really stood out about Ennis.
Right,
He's battled kind of ever. Yeah. And he was a little bit banged up today as well. Looked like he took a leg to the head and he was favoring his right arm a little bit on another play. But he's just everywhere. And he can hit people. He's a fearless guy, just like Cat is.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on Ennis. That was a good thing to bring up, because yeah, it is a little bit of a conundrum with him, because yeah, I think it's just quarterbacks. You don't want to throw his way. I mean, he hits hard, he defends the pass well. We've known this for years now, with Ennis, and seeing him develop. And you're right, you are right, Peyton, with one of those fumbles. That was that felt like a play that would have been a Mizzou call if they had somehow called that a forward pass on that RPO sort of miscue. But it was a fumble, and that was the right call. But hey, great teams sometimes need a break, and Mizzou got one. They got one with the first fumble too, where Tennessee's driving toward the end of that first half, and then you get the takeaway, and all of a sudden that momentum is gone, and Tennessee just could not get it back. 83 rush yards. Mizzou held the Volunteers to on Saturday evening. Back to the offensive side of the ball. I think now. Let's talk about Brady Cook for a little bit, because, Cody Schrader was the star of the show. That, Brad Nessler was, I think he called the trio of Cook, Schrader, and Burden. He was calling them the St. Louis Stars. What were your thoughts on Cook's performance tonight? Because he started out with the interception. He had that deep pass to Marquise Johnson, which was, I think, his furthest throw of the night. And even that, I know Peyton sent us a text and was like, that ball still looked like kind of horrendous, even though it was still a big completion. Marquise Johnson was just wide open, but still in the end, 275 yards and a touchdown on 18 completions, and added 55 yards and a TD on the ground, which is where I thought he really showed out, was using his legs, especially at the beginning of that game. But what were your thoughts on Cook this evening?
Yeah, definitely improved from last week. He needed a big response after what I kind of thought was about his worst half of his career, a half that would really stick with him. That second half against Georgia. At first, he did not respond well. I mean, that first interception was really ugly. But after that, I mean, that's just kind of what's been the mantra, just shaking things off, proving to yourself that you are as good as people say you are. He was, again, it wasn't a perfect day. That throw to Marquise Johnson should have been 6. But I mean, Marquise Johnson, as we've said a million times, he does not look like a freshman. I mean, what an unbelievable, that's an underrated play that I didn't see a lot of hype for. That was such an unbelievable diving grab by him. But Cook was much, much better. Really liked what he did with his legs. Twice when Mizzou was backed up on the goal line, after really good punts from Tennessee tried to win the field position game. Cook used his legs, scrambled for 2 first downs. One of them was kind of, I thought the broadcast put it well, a design dash to get Brady Cook to bait rush up the middle, then just scamper to the outside and pick up a first down. But overall, it wasn't a perfect day. It was a pretty good day, though. And I was glad to see he could hook up with Burden there at the end, because Burden was very clearly not 100%, was just not moving well. So I'm glad they were able to get him a touchdown at the end there.
You could also see the frustrations for Luther as well throughout that whole game. He had opportunities where maybe he thought he was open, maybe he thought the different play would have gotten in the ball. And I mean, even with the injury, it's just frustrating that he can't play it at his level in the game that, he can control. But another thing that just really stood out to me is the way Kirby Moore and this offensive staff just called the game. I think early on, the secondary for Tennessee was a little bit stronger. We saw Brady Cook take a sack early, and you're looking at that play from, like the coach's eye that you watch the game from, you're going to see like a lot of those wide receivers were locked up and he didn't really have any plays. They turned to the rushing attack. They rushed more than they passed, of course, and it just turned out really well. And I even went back and looked at it, and I thought, the first quarter he didn't throw for as much. I'm talking about Brady Cook here. That was when he had his most passing attempts. He had 11, and it trickled down from 6, 3, 4 through the 4 quarters. Just the rushing game, it was turning to that, and that's what really controlled it. And Jackie, you shared with us, a good quote from Drinkwitz this past week on the teleconference, talking a little bit about how Tennessee's offense is hard to replicate in practice. And I joked with you guys that the way that they replicate is that they just took the time of possession away. Mizzou just controlled this game. They controlled the clock, especially in that first quarter and in that first half. 39 minutes and 56 seconds to 20 minutes and 4 seconds. The Tigers were in full control. They had the steering wheel the whole game.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, sometimes the best way to play defense is just by keeping the other team's offense off of the field. I think that was a huge point in the game. I mentioned the stat earlier that, Tennessee only had the ball for 10 minutes in the first half and then pretty much equaled that in the second half. So it wasn't even necessarily that Tennessee couldn't respond. They didn't respond. They just couldn't. They weren't on the field. And when they were, they made a couple mistakes. Mizzou's defense stepped up like we just talked about. But Peyton, what you kind of talked about made kind of gives me the impression that like Mizzou in this game just didn't have to lean. Like obviously they leaned a lot on Cody Schrader, but it just shows like the balance that this offense can have, where you can have Luther Burden still out there playing banged up, playing locked up a bit in the first half. I think you do have to give Tennessee's DBs some credit. To limit a guy like Luther to even under 50 yards receiving is impressive. Still give up a touchdown, but to be able to just have this offensive balance where you have a guy who like Cook who can run, or you can hand the ball off or check it down to Cody Schrader and let him do his thing, I think is great for this team. And they know how to pick their moments. It seems Luther Burden knows when it's like, all right, this is my day. Today it was Cody Schrader's day. Tomorrow it could be Brady Cook's day. Next week it could be Brett Norfleet's day, which would be great. 2 catches today. Shout out. But
I want to interrupt you real quick about the tight end position. Is that we saw Tyler Stevens play go down a lot. I mean, the snaps went down because he did struggle. He dropped 3 or 4 drops earlier in the season, and I noticed him a lot more today. And I don't know if that's just because I'm always looking at the numbers and seeing who's on the field. He was out there for a lot of the blocking, and we talked about Jordan Harris being a good blocker earlier in the season. Looked like they're really relying on Tyler Stevens a little bit more now.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Brett Norfleet's catching passes, we're a Brett Norfleet podcast. We have to look out for our guy. But yeah, I think just the amount of weapons it showed off in a different way, where it wasn't Luther Burden getting 150 yards. It wasn't Brady Cook passing, for 300 plus. He got close, to be fair, but I think it's just it again showed just the offensive balance that this team has. Let's turn to some of maybe the not so good on Missouri's side, which is a little bit of penalty issues. There were definitely some moments where I thought, they might give away this drive due to penalties. Thankfully, Tennessee kind of reciprocated them in that department. They had 95 yards from 9 penalties. Mizzou 50 yards from 7 penalties. But we had Cameron Johnson got called for a false start and a holding. I don't think that was the only offensive line. Membu got called for a false start too. Had 2 fifth man in the backfield illegal formation calls for Theo Wees. I don't really know, what you do like that. That's just basics. You got to coach that better in those moments. But what were your thoughts? It ended up not affecting Mizzou too badly, but once again, especially on the O-line, same old story a bit. And Peyton sang their praises. We're taking nothing away from the O-line's performance today, but still, again, there's some mistakes to clean up there in the penalty department.
Yeah, I don't really care about the penalties as much today. Especially
it's nice when you don't have to, right?
4 of them were on one drive. So it was, and one of them was Brady Cook's fault because he didn't snap the ball in time, and that got Theo Weiss called for I believe they called it a false start. It was more just an illegal procedure because he wasn't even set. Overall, I don't really care. There weren't any that derailed the drive, I don't think. Obviously, you don't want them, but might as well get them out now, especially for Cameron Johnson, who struggled with penalties mightily earlier in the year, but I don't know what Brandon Jones has started doing at practice because he's been really, really more disciplined the last few weeks. He's going to get a couple down the line. You might as well have him this game.
It's incredibly hard not to go a full game without a penalty, at least one on the offensive line. Sometimes you jump, and that's what Armand Membu, he barely moved as the right tackle, and then Brady Cook went up to him, just hit him on the helmet. He said, "You're good, dog." That's it's nothing bad there. And it was I think it was 2nd and 1. I know Drink looked a little bit mad about it happening, but something that it's just going to happen, especially just with an offensive line. And for Theo Weiss, it does kind of suck that 2 of those go against him, or just maybe in the stat book or reflected on him, because on the first illegal formation, that he was marked as a guy in the backfield. He looked right at the line judge and pointed to him, "Am I good?"
Oh, it was
And
the
then
Terry
you see the
McLaurin thing?
yeah, you see the frustration after.
Ugh.
He was like, I asked if I was good, and you could obviously see when you're looking at it when they showed you the replay, he was not on the line, and that's just kind of it's just the frustrations there, and then just not being said. It's more just a team thing there, and it goes against him. But at the end of the day, I don't think the coaching staff's going to credit him for those.
That's that's like Terry McLaurin against the Bears when they were trying to win the game and they had the illegal formation penalty, even though he pointed at the ref. Yeah, that's tough. Hey, listen, Mizzou's got 8 wins. It's every Mizzou fan's on euphoria. We got to humble everybody a little bit. You got to nitpick a little bit, find the things that they can still improve on. Every team can get better, but I think it was as close to perfect today as maybe we'll get, with the exception of maybe some big plays from like Burden, and he still had a touchdown, which is like really all you can ask for. Let's quick hit on special teams. I think the only 2 main storylines, we had Chris Abrams drain on punts. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but that feels like in part because Luther Burden wasn't all the way healthy. And then Mr. Craig the leg himself, Blake Craig, the backup kicker, was doing kickoffs. And Peyton, that was no bueno from him today.
He was bad. He was pretty bad on the kickoffs. Didn't get him to the end zone. 2 of them got returned. So Mevis replaced him in the second half. So Mevis, I remember there was a quote this week. I forget who tweeted it. I believe it was Wendell Shepard. Maybe it was Brandon Haynes. Cook, or not Cook. Mevis's mechanics are just a little funky on kickoffs right now, is what the issue was. So it sounds correctable because earlier in the year he was getting them through the end zone. So you kind of hope he can get back to that, because Blake Craig sure can't do it right now. Maybe he can in the future, but definitely not for now. Chris Abrams' drain on punts. I mean, we'll see if that remains permanent when Cook is healthy. He didn't drop any. He didn't return any, really. I don't really care either way about him on punt returns. I just am kind of glad it's not Luther anymore.
Yeah, when Burden's healthy too. I don't think we want Brady Cook back there on punts, but
well, we definitely don't want Brady Cook back there.
Yeah, I don't want Brady Cook back there on punts.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not gonna, it's Blake Craig's first time being out there, and I'm not gonna like take any shots at him. He is an All-American kicker. He was he's a freshman. Yeah, he's a freshman too. Under Armour All-American is what I was trying to say, and there's a lot still there to grow for him, and I'm not gonna take any shots at him, but he is a good guy to replace Mevis one day, and that's something to kind of look forward to. Is what can he kind of bring, especially like sitting a year under Harrison Mevis.
Just as I was a Tucker McCann fan when we started at Mizzou in 2019, just as I became a Mevis fan when he took his spot, I will be a Craig the Leg supporter unless he proves me significantly otherwise. I
want to say
go ahead.
I want to say Blake Craig is also a very respectable young man.
Mr. Van Doren.
Yeah, he called me Mr. Van Doren once, not knowing that I'm only 3 years older than him, and that was very nice of him.
Yeah, it's interesting because you look at the recruitment rankings for the special teams that Eric Link brings in; they're always highly touted. Like you said, Blake Craig is like a big deal.
He's a good kicker.
Yeah, right now, freshman can't get it through the end zone. Probably won't be seeing him again this year.
Yeah, I will stay a Blake Craig fan. I will always be a kicker guy. That's well known on this show. But yeah, those are the quick hits on special teams, and then we just have some other stuff. I think we got to talk a little bit about what happened at the end of this game, where Tennessee trying to kick a field goal to end it, and again, this goes back to what I brought up in the intro. Mizzou remembered the 66 points it was at the end of the 2022 game. Mizzou remembered that, and Drinkwitz pulled a little petty out. I have some more quotes from him I'll read at the end of this, but he iced Tennessee's kicker when they were trying to get to double digits. Tennessee ends up missing the field goal, and that's how the game ends. There was a little scrum because Brady Cook got pushed when they were doing the kneel down. Drinkwitz sprinted onto the field, got his guys out of there, because obviously the announcers pointed it out. If you do something stupid in that moment, you can get tossed for the first half of Mizzou's next game. So that's good that no one had it there, but pretty funny stuff at the end with the gamesmanship from Drinkwitz. Kenny mentioned the post-game interview. He remembered. He did not forget.
It felt like the end of both halves kind of defined this game for Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee, like we mentioned earlier, was driving, and then they fumble with 20 seconds at the end of the first half, and Mizzou winds up stealing 3 points when Cody Schrader does what Cody Schrader does and just break a couple big runs. Cook had a completion. They get three from Mevis going into the locker room, and then this one, man, that was really something. Watching Josh Heupel trot his goddamn field goal unit out there down 29. It was pathetic. I was pretty like, this is lame. Good for Drake icing that kicker. And then he missed it. That was totally deserved. Tennessee absolutely deserved that. Not just don't forget about what just happened last year. I mean, 2 years ago, 2021,
Yeah,
in
that was
the
bad.
worst home game I've ever attended. The crowd sucked. The weather sucked. Everything sucked about Mizzou, Tennessee 2021 when Mizzou lost 62-24. God, I can't believe that team made a whole game. But yeah, what goes around comes around. I wish Drink had honestly gone for another touchdown at the end there, but it was whatever. Drink will take the sort of high road there, but I was glad to see Petty Drink make an appearance with an icing the kicker, and then our defense kicked their damn ass or whatever the exact quote was.
Threw another swear word in there. Their damn ass.
Who cares? Drinkwitz was fired up. I was too.
No, it was great. It was great.
We've never said that Drinkwitz doesn't coach until the final whistle either. We talk about the Alabama game in 2020 in his first season. You're
His
getting
first
beat by
game.
Alabama. First game, and he played it until the final whistle, calling timeouts as time right before time expires. And I mean, good on him to just remember too. I like you brought that up, Peyton. It's like not just let that go, let it go like they're going to take the field goal. If you're going to go out there and try to kick a field goal to reach double digits, we're going to play too, and we're going to call it there.
Yeah.
And what do they say about karma too? And that's what it is. Karma's a bitch, and this kind of happened to them. And you look at where what happened last year after that Missouri game against South Carolina, the week after for Tennessee, they lost 63-38 on the road. You just don't run up the score. And I understand you had your backup in. Joe Milton was the one who handed off for that touchdown in 2022. He was the backup at the time.
Yeah.
And
I think he was throwing too.
He was throwing, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a passing touchdown. So yeah, I mean, it's coming full circle. Now he's a starter here or started this year, and so you just kind of realize people remember that stuff.
Yeah, Joe Milton in relief last year went 3 for 3, 105 yards and a touchdown. And
That's right.
Let me say this about Tennessee doing that last year. I totally get what Tennessee was doing last year. That was a game where it's like Tennessee was left out of the CFP back when it was hilarious and we thought they could actually make the CFP. They were trying to run up the score at the time we knew that Mizzou defense was pretty good. We knew it was a much improved unit from the year before. So they were trying to prove a point. Drinkwitz said all the right things. He said, he was coaching till the end. I don't have a problem with it. But I think we know he took that personally, and he should. That's stuff you should take personally, whether it was or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is the appropriate time for another quote courtesy of Callum McAndrew. Drinkwitz, I think he said all the right stuff after this game too, and much more entertaining. Drinkwitz, quote, "Can't kill us. We've already been killed. We've been at the bottom. We were there last year." So he did not forget a little bit of gamesmanship. I think everyone loved to see that from Eli to end the game. Other fun thing, they posted this graphic, I think, on CBS. Mizzou is the first ever team to beat all FBS teams in the state of Tennessee in one season: Memphis, Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee, and now the Tennessee Volunteers. So that's pretty cool.
Drink said it after the game. He said the Tennessee State champions line.
Oh, he did. Yeah.
Mhm.
Tennessee State champions. There you go. And then the only other thing, and this is a little bit, I think, personal for the three of us because of the game we watched in 2021. Kenny brought that game up and how just ugly it was. This kind of was a similar thing kind of happened in that game, if you can believe it, as different as the result was, where Tennessee's players were just getting so injured at the beginning of this game. I think, Kenny, you wrote down they had a roughly 7 to 8 injuries. Like, they all kind of came in the beginning of the game. We heard the fans boo. And just to explain to maybe anyone that doesn't know, I think all Mizzou fans understand why that was. This team just, like, it's a weird amount of injuries. We obviously, we don't root for injury. We don't want anyone getting hurt. But I remember it got on people's nerves in 2021, and it kind of happened again, at least to start the game.
Well, the thing about 2021 is it happened on every single extra point. And it was like
Yes.
Tennessee was already running up the score. The crowd was already cranky. It was an 11 a.m. kick. The weather sucked. So people were just booing. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people were getting hurt early in the game on both sides. The medical tents got a workout in this one. Um, Overall, it did cool off at the end of the game. I know Tennessee did have one serious injury. The guy that caught the touchdown against Cad got hurt on that play and did not come back. And Tyron Hopper did not come back either. So hopefully nothing serious on either side. But it's a weird little coincidence between those two games.
Gotta wonder if the turf monster at Faroe Field has something against the Volunteers at this point. So many guys going down. I wrote 7-8 on there because 7 of them were like stopping play. One of them was an offensive lineman, got a little bit banged up and had to walk off. But man, it's just I don't know if it's something between playing on grass and turf because I know Neyland is grass. I don't know. It was such a weird coincidence that it happened again.
Yeah, very strange. But it is what it is. Final things I have, the two other stats. One more thing on Cody Schrader. He had his 2 longest catches of the season today. I think that was pretty to be expected. He got lifted up in the air after the game and said, "That is definitely the number 1 moment in my life." So another just cool moment for him. Other thing I had, 7 points is the lowest point total Josh Heupel has ever scored in his 70 games as Tennessee's head coach. And then final one from Callum McAndrew. He had a couple more quotes from Drink and Darius Robinson. One, I could tell the second or the third quarter they didn't want to be out there no more. We dominated Tennessee, and they're going to remember that. So I think that's a good note to end. He also joked that with him being gone, now the returning players are going to have to deal with an angry Tennessee next year. But if Mizzou deals with them in the way that they did this season, they should have no problems, as we saw. But what a win. Guys, just quick thoughts, like, I guess, within the larger context of the rest of Mizzou's season to end things off. I just want to hear kind of what this means for the Tigers, because we also have now, they face a Florida team that's been up and down all year. That's a personal game for me. I'll get into that preview. And then an Arkansas team that now is playing for nothing after getting thumped by Auburn. So 10-win season very much there, boys.
Yeah, if not, I would say it's darn near likely at this point. You get Florida at home, blackout game on the ESPN night slot. That's another special thing. Mizzou really has kind of earned the national recognition that we all can say we don't really care about, but it's cool when CBS and ESPN want to come watch Mizzou games at Pro. And then you get that Black Friday CBS spot for Mizzou, Arkansas, and what's going to be one of the last SEC CBS games ever. So, been a very special. I don't know about 2013 level special or anything, but just a big year. Mizzou's going to probably put itself in a position for a New Year's 6 bid. We'll have to see if everything else shakes their way. But yeah, this was probably the biggest swing game of the year for Mizzou, and boy, oh boy, did it swing their direction.
With the conference forever changing and the SEC gaining 2 teams, and we talked about the schedule is going to look different next year. These permanent rivals, you're not going to have the East and the West anymore. And going out against teams that had your number for 4 or 5 seasons is probably a great feeling for this program, even though Drinkwitz and a lot of these players weren't even here for the first one, 4 years ago. Or 5 years ago. And you look at beating Tennessee at home, beating Kentucky on the road. Those are 2 teams you might have seen as rivals to some. Those are still games that you wanted to win each year because those are the ones that you're battling for one of the top 2-3 spots in the SEC East when it all is said and done. And it's good to go out with like that. And maybe they'll face them again in 2025. But you look at the 2024 schedule, those 2 teams aren't on there anymore. And this team's done a good job of not looking too far ahead as well. Not skipping over a week, going against Florida. Florida's a team that's beaten Tennessee at home. I mean, there's been games there that they've shown flashes that they can beat teams, and it's a good thing that they're not looking too far ahead. They're not looking towards Arkansas or maybe even a New Year's 6 if that comes in the conversation, depending on how Ole Miss ends its season, because they're both fighting for an SEC spot and stuff like that. And they've done a good job of not looking too far ahead. Just, the 1-0 mentality each week is probably what's really carrying this team and just building a great culture for Eli Drinkwitz and his staff.
That's a good cautionary tale, Kenny, or precaution or whatever. Don't look overhead. I mean, this is a feisty Florida team. You have Arkansas, who I've always thought sometimes the most dangerous team to play is a team with nothing to play for, because they just throw it all out on the line and they try and beat the hell out of you, especially a rival. So, Mizzou's got to get through that. But as Peyton hinted at, definitely a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon. Mizzou can get there. It's a very nice thought to think, well, now you got Georgia and Alabama playing in the SEC championship game for playoff. You got Ole Miss and I guess LSU, who have had good years. And then you got Mizzou right up there with those two programs, like and top 4, top 3 arguments in terms of ranking the SEC as a whole. That's a pretty awesome place to be for an Eli Drinkwitz team that last year was playing Wake Forest in a 53-degree Tampa, Florida game as their bowl last year. So it's come a long way. Still a lot to prove for Mizzou football, but what a win. 36-7, they beat Tennessee. That'll do it for us, the Unwritten Rule. Everyone go enjoy your victory Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll be back on Monday. We got some more news. We're going to unfortunately have to go to some of the bad and recap that men's basketball loss to Memphis. That was an ugly game. But we'll get to that. Let's enjoy the excitement while we've got it. So for us, this has been the Unwritten Rule presented by Bet Online. See you guys Monday.